working, was it? Hello, hello. Yeah, I think it's working now.
All right, if I can have everyone's attention, we'll continue our media availability here at Dover International Speedway. We're now joined by Jamie McMurray, driver of the number 1 McDonald Chevrolet. Jamie, coming into this race, you're coming off 3 consecutive top 10 finishes. What have you guys been doing differently, and how is your team approaching this weekend and the final few races of the season?
Yeah, really not anything different. Our cars have been really good all year long. I feel like early in the year and midway through the season that we'd run well, but weren't able to put the whole race together. It just seems like the last 5 or 6 races we've run well at the beginning of the race and been able to put a finish together with it. So it's just kind of been a little more consistent.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions. We'll start up front with Steve. Can we get a mic?
Okay.
Jamie, you were part of the test at Michigan with the lower downforce package that we are going with. Can you assess the process that you went through and then what you think that's going to feel like, look like on the racetrack as we start to project to 2015?
Yeah, so when we did the test at Michigan, when most of the test was about adding more downforce to the car, and then they let us have a run where we literally put what I think most of us thought was going to be too small of a spoiler on the car, and they completely removed the radiator pan in the front to try to balance it out. And I think, for the most part, all of us were shocked that we could have taken even more off. So when the rules were announced, I think there was maybe we were hoping to get more downforce removed. But when I look at that, if they would have put it in my hands, I don't think that I would have taken that big of a chance either of removing all of the downforce from the car. I think we're going to lean and creep towards taking more downforce off over the next couple of years. But we have to develop a tire that's soft enough to run well at the beginning and have give up. And I think it's hard to do that. I know it's really hard to do that all in one shot. So I was happy to see that they took some of the downforce away. With the amount of drag that we took out of the car, that's going to help the less horsepower. I don't think anybody really wanted less horsepower. But the thought process behind that was that we can maybe make the engines run 2 races 2 years from now in 2016, and I think that's good for the teams, good for the sport. If we can save a little bit of money on the engine side, and that creates a new challenge obviously for the engine builders. But it's I think that it's going to be a really good package. I hope that in 2016 we can go towards taking even more downforce away and get a little bit of a softer tire yet again. But I think baby steps or smaller steps is better than just a Hail Mary at it.
What do you, from the driver's seat, what do you expect the feel to be in the race car different from what you have now with a higher downforce? What do you expect it to feel like as the driver?
Well, it's not going to feel as secure and as comfortable to drive, but we have to create off throttle time. When we go to places, Michigan is the best example. When you go to Michigan and you only let off the gas for 1 second, maybe a second and a half in each corner, the guy behind you has no chance of passing you. It's hard. So when we removed the downforce, it created not only off throttle time but braking. All of a sudden you were having to use the brakes and you were sliding up the racetrack. So it was a lot different racing than what we had even in the last race and when we added more downforce. So the removing the downforce is ultimately about just creating off throttle time, and all the drivers feel like the more off throttle time we have, the more passing that we're going to have.
Questions for Jamie? Jay?
Jay Pennell of Fox Sports. Kind of touching off your first comments, the way you guys are running right now and the way that the 42's running, does it kind of make you sit there and think, man, what could have been in the chase, and touch on kind of like the chemistry between you and Kyle? And obviously the cars and the rules are going to be different next year, but does this give you guys confidence going into next season, knowing, hey, this is what we did here at the end, in the end stages of 2014, we can do this all year long in 2015?
Yeah, well, I don't live my life based on what ifs. We have that every weekend in racing. Our group has run extremely well all year long. The last few weeks, it's been showcased, I think, more. And the part that I'm most encouraged about our season is that in 2010 when we won the 500 in the Brickyard, when Charlotte had won Watkins Glen, I think there were a lot of unknowns of why we were running so well. They really hadn't changed a lot from 2009, and 2010 was just a really good year for us. Some of it I think had to do with the engines at the time. The ECR engines were probably the best engines at that time. But there was a lot of unknowns in our shop of why are we running so much better. Then we went through obviously a tough couple of years. But when I look at this year, everything is scienced out, and the reasons are from lots of testing. Our simulation program, all the wind tunnel testing, everything is known of why it's better and why we're running better. So that is awesome leading into next year, because we know why, and they know the areas that they need to work on to make the cars better. The rules changes for next year, even though it's a couple inches of spoiler and the radiator pan, I don't think that's going to change who's running well versus who's not. It'll be really just about getting the balance of the car back. So I'm not really as concerned about that, because I feel like we know why we're running so much better this year versus last year, the year before.
Okay, we'll take our next question up front. Dustin?
Dustin Long, MRN.com. Can you just explain why you don't think the rule changes will impact how it'll affect drivers next year? I mean, it seems like every year when there's changes, there's always some drivers that adjust or don't adjust, but you say these changes aren't significant enough for that, or can you explain that?
Well, I think sometimes when they make rules changes, there's a lot more that goes into it. Cutting the spoiler off and narrowing the radiator pan up, though that's going to create a lot less downforce, I think that teams all have an idea of what that's going to do already. When we talked about rules changes before, like the last really big rule change we had was when we went from the huge front splitter to what we currently have. And for some of the groups, ours included, we ran really well with that old configuration. And a lot of that had to do with just the way we mounted that, and you found like an advantage of a way to mount that on the car. Where now you're not changing items like that where they're as significant as what the splitter was. So I don't know that if you were to take a survey in the garage, that people aren't freaking out over the rules changes, because I think we all kind of know that direction and what it's going to be.
Okay, we'll take Lee, then go back to Steve.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. I think a little more about what he's getting into is some people say these rule changes will benefit a guy like Kyle Busch, who likes a loose car. The current configuration seems to play into Jeff Gordon's hands. In like where Ganassi is right now, and as much improvement as you all have made over the year, does it frustrate you that you're right there on the precipice and now we're going to get changes again, and will you still be able to do what you're doing now with the new rules?
Yeah, I think that the media plays that up a little bit more than what the reality is of if you cut spoiler off that it favors one guy over another. I think we'd all like to believe that one guy likes a looser car or a tighter car, but ultimately we just like fast cars. And if your crew chief can get the balance correct for you, I don't think it matters what configuration you're in. If you look back over the past 10 years, I don't think that Jimmy Johnson struggled with one particular package more than the other. It's about the team figuring out what that guy needs with that package, and once you get that, I think you have the same guys running up front.
Do you have that with Keith Rodden?
Yeah, Keith has been, I personally really enjoy Keith, but he also has, just a great way at getting to where we need to be. And my favorite part of Keith is that he has an answer to every question. I feel like he's already thinking about things before I am, and I feel like I'm ahead of the game on most of that. So when I ask Keith a question, I don't know that I've ever had I don't know, let me think about it. He already has an answer to that, and he's just a really sharp guy, and he's done an amazing job this year being a first-year crew chief. There's a lot of obstacles that I don't think you realize when you become a crew chief that come up, where when you're the engineer, that's on the crew chief's hands. So Keith has done an amazing job at first-year crew chief, and I only sense that getting better.
And finally, people point to Team Penske and how when they all came under one roof that it was very beneficial to everybody. Do you get the sense of feeling that maybe if the Ganassi teams were under the same roof with or the IndyCar teams were under the same roof with the Cup teams, that you might benefit from some of that technology being all together?
I don't know. I don't know. I like the idea that all those teams are together at Penske, but I've never been over there to see how it actually works. I don't know if all the engineers sit in the same room or if it's. I don't know how that works. I don't think we're ever going to be at that point. The IndyCar team being where it is, with the IMSA team is working really well. And I don't know that that's benefiting Penske. Again, I think that's media making more out of that than it is, which is great for all you guys, I guess. But it's not. I mean, you just email back and forth or get on the phone. I don't know that it's that big a deal that you have to sit right next to each other.
Okay, we'll take our last question from Steve. Go ahead.
Steve Richards at PRN. Going to Kansas next week, Jamie, it looks like the one team at least is about a 10th to 15th place car on the mile and a half. So are you guys ready to take the next step? And if so, what do you need to do at Kansas?
I didn't hear that. All I can hear is those two.
Oh, okay.
Say it one more time, Steve.
Kansas coming up this weekend.
Yep.
I mean, it looks like your team is about a 10th to 15th place car on the mile and a half this season. Are you guys ready to take the next step? And what do you need to do at Kansas to do that?
Well, I honestly I think we're a little better than that at the mile and a halfs. Chicago being the last one we ran really well at, won the All-Star race on a mile and a half. So it's really about Kansas is one of those tracks that tires don't fall off a whole lot. They don't mean a whole lot. So it's about qualifying well and having the right pit strategy. And if you can get in the top 5, it's much easier to maintain. It's hard at a place like that where the groove's fairly narrow. And the tires don't fall off to make up a lot of ground, but Kansas should be really good for us. Racing goes in these waves, and when things aren't going well, you can't do anything right. But when things are going well, everything you do is right. And fortunately for our group, not just the one, but the 42 car, we're on the high side of that, and it just seems like the changes we make each week and the developments they come up with each week are better. So I'm looking forward to really pretty much any track we go to.
Jamie, thank you for your time this morning, and good luck this weekend.